Mr. Shashwat Awasthi, ladies and gentlemen, one of the finest products of Dr. Ramanaloya National Law University, which is to be produced in 2022. One of the most hardworking kids that we have around, the most entrepreneurial, the most creative person, and one of the finest footballers in our university as of this moment. Also, a huge Manchester United fan, and I mean, that's consoling because we don't debate on Messi and Ronaldo anymore. I think we've settled on Ronaldo being the best. A very dear friend, and also happens to be my go-to partner for negotiation mediation competitions. So here he is on the One Take Show. We will be talking about the 1 year anniversary of his very celebrated blog, that is the Contemporary Law Forum. I'm sure everyone has heard of it. Hello, sir. Hello, Shashwat ji. Am I audible to you?
Absolutely loud and clear, Kaustubh, and I hope I am audible as well.
अरे सर बिल्कुल गरजती शाम की तरह आपकी आवाज हमारे जहन में उतरती हुई.
And thank
How
you
are
for
you?
that introduction. And I absolutely don't concur with the first part, but I'll be happy with the latter. I'm a huge Manchester United fan, and yes, I'm one of the finest footballers that RML has right now. But maybe that's just because, like in all fairness, uh, uh, because of the way I've been born and brought up with the sport around me. But yeah, I'll be happy with the latter part. And yeah, obviously we don't debate on Ronaldo and Messi. Yeah.
Absolutely not. I think you settled on that. But just to be clear, we have really good footballers in our college. And it
Yeah.
is not that we don't have good footballers. We have good footballers.
Yeah.
But Shashwat Awasthi stands apart because Shashwat Awasthi has been playing for so long. So yeah, Awasthi, what we do now is by that we'll make this conversation a little fun. We'll talk about everything that we have to. But
Absolutely.
let's start with a little bit of your background. I think it is very
Yeah.
interesting. Not a lot of people know. I know almost everything because
Yeah.
we've had this conversation on so many instances. But you
Right.
had a very interesting background. Apart from just being academically oriented, you were a sports person, a proper performing, functioning sports person who used to represent teams and not just in state, national level, but also on international level as well. So, what
Right.
was that experience of yours like when you started off like that?
So this is probably the most interesting and fun question I've had someone to ask me about. So as you've already mentioned, my primary aim in life was to become a professional footballer till the ninth standard. So
Okay.
up till ninth standard, I was very sure that I want to be a professional footballer and I want to play for India. And as far as clubs are concerned, I want to play outside India because that's where the real test begins, as
Yeah.
my coach always suggested. So that was the initial idea. I started playing from when I was 5 years old, and I joined an academy when I was 9 years old, and I kept training, and that training gradually, had a lot of impact on me and on my game. And with that,
Yeah.
I also got the opportunity to not only represent the academy, but to access other platforms as well. So I represented my state. I also got the humble opportunity to represent my country in some of these tournaments. And
Humble opportunity. Sure. Yeah,
absolutely,
that's not
because
humble. Representing your country is not humble anyway. Let's shed that out. It's one of the most glorious things anyone has done in my circle. Okay, you're representing India is fucking glorious. Under no possible circumstance, that's humble.
thank you for that. But I played certain tournaments in Malaysia, in Thailand, in Greece, and the level of football, particularly in Europe and Greece, was fantastic, and it really helped me a lot. So, to describe my initial part of the journey, I would describe myself as a proper semi-professional footballer who used to spend 30 hours a week training and playing football with absolutely no focus on, being good at academics. There was never an intent to excel at academics, of course, but there was always this minimum effort to, be at least decent at what I do in academic terms as well, because I would not want to, disappoint my parents and people around me that I'm only focusing and failing on that front. So that was the initial idea, and in ninth, things just couldn't, fall into place as I wanted them to be. So the focus shifted, and I started academic opportunities as well, got into debating. As you know, I got into MUNs, and
Yes,
through
oh,
that,
yeah,
I just decided to pursue law because it suited my interests and it just felt the right thing to do at that point of time.
so when you made the switch to law school, when RML started, and there was a categorical shift from your perhaps, like, I know you sort of shifted to strictly academic in your class 11th and 12th. I think that's how
Right.
mostly what Indian students do. They shift to academics in 11th and 12th. But once you moved into RML, that shift from perhaps having some aspirations for football to now restricting it to just as a hobby, as an evening practice, occasional evening practice, and now keeping your major chunk of focus on the law school, the
Right.
opportunities, the moods, the negotiations. What was
Right.
that shift like? Was it shocking for you? Was it easy for you?
Uh, Certainly wasn't easy because, see, the heart obviously lies there. So if today I get the opportunity that a club comes to me and says that we'll offer you the opportunity to play for us, would I choose it over a legal career per se? My answer, I think, would be yes, because that is where the heart lies, and like that's something just that I just love more than anything, more than any other profession, I would say. Because that's how I grew up. Because see, foundations of things in life are very important. So it's the way you grow up, and see, I've only 4 years in law school. I've only spent 4 years in law school, but from the age of 5 to the age of say 17, 12 years of my life, if I've given to something, the heart obviously lies there, and the things always want to go towards that front. But the shift wasn't easy, but it just kind of stemmed out well. I prepared myself, and see, that's where I think that my shift in 11th and 12th standards to more academic things and more to the debating front, to MUNs, helped me a lot, because I was already in touch with public speaking, first of all, which is very important for a law student. I think it's very important for everyone to at least practice public speaking, even if they're not confident, and even if they do not want to face a camera, but at least they should have the ability to convey their thoughts. I think that's the most important part. And secondly, with formulating thoughts and expressing them, I think that's very important as well for a lawyer and for a law student to do. And that's where MUNs helped me a lot, because I used to think from the perspective of the country or the representative that I got to represent in that particular conference, and formulating certain novel thoughts and just expressing them. So I think that's what helped me a lot to prepare myself for law school. And this wasn't intentional at all. It just happened, and it just happened to prepare me for law school. So when I entered, certain things became easier for me. And I think that's also very... I think that's also a matter of privilege for me. See, I got the opportunity to study at a good school. I got the opportunity to attend these conferences. Not many people have that, and I'm absolutely thankful to my, destiny and to my luck that I got the opportunity to do these things. Because of people who haven't got the opportunity to expose themselves to these things early in life, it's very difficult to suddenly experience the wave that law school, presents you with. These many opportunities, you have to do everything, and certainly there's a lot of peer pressure as well. But I think coming from that position of privilege, I would say it just prepared me well, and it became slightly easier for me to do things in law school, I think.
So when you started doing things in law school, okay,
right,
how was that impression of RML like? Because there are multiple stages in RML also that both of us had. I think most of those stages we shared sort of together, may be living near to each other or perhaps participating in competition together. But I think what I experienced was observing that how independent college gets, and how that can be problematic also and very empowering also. You can get complacent, and you can also make a choice of participating into things. You can choose to prioritize your time, and you cannot. So what was that impression of RML like for you?
See, firstly, all my original rants with regards to RML and law school in particular have been shared with you. We've done, just for the audience to know, we have done multiple competitions together, and we've been to a lot of places in India doing these competitions, debates, negotiations. And we have had a lot of rants about RML in particular and law schools. See, with regards to RML as a university and how my opinion developed about that particular law school, it's again, there are certain good things and certain bad things. See, no college is good or bad in pure black and white terms. Every college has certain good things and every college has certain bad things. See, you would agree that the good thing about RML is you get a lot of opportunities here. I think
Absolutely.
you wouldn't get the kind of opportunities if you were in any other law school. And many of the law schools in India, the kind of opportunities that RML presents you with, and they're in abundance, not just one or two opportunities a year, but you can do as many things as you want alongside managing academics, because you do not have, tri-semesters there. I think that works out fairly well for people in RML, because we have to manage these things in order to develop our, profile, because and then comes the bad part, because we do not have a lot of, placements or day zeros here. So we have to make that profile as, I think as diverse as possible, because you have to show the prospective employer, no matter where you go, that you are a person who can not excel but do different things and put in work at different, at different fronts. So I think that way RML is good. But the bad side again is it doesn't present you with the opportunities to get hired at the right time. And it doesn't really, I wouldn't say it matters a lot, but it certainly plays a role in how it affects you mentally. See, I know for a fact, and many people know for a fact, that it's okay even if you don't get placed by the end of your fourth year, even if you don't get placed by the starting of your fifth year, because eventually you're going to get placed. Even if at the end of your law school you do not get placed, it will take 2 or 3 months. But it affects you mentally, because you see everyone from your class coaching, from your school getting placed, and it just hits you, am I doing something wrong, or will I get placed at a decent place or not? So that really happens. And I think the second bad part about RML is, like you and me have shared this concern for a very long time. When we go to competitions, is the institutional support and the support in terms of the mentoring part. See, we've been to competitions and sometimes we just felt that maybe if we had a coach or, a particular mentor who's dedicated towards, say, ADR, for example, or towards negotiations, who's been at that competition, if we can have that resource, our performance would increase manifold. And I think the alumni are brilliant. The seniors, I think the most valuable asset that I can get from this university are the type of seniors that we have. Excellent seniors across the batches. From the very first year itself, I've come to realize that. But, the lack of that institutional support to the entire mentorship structure, it's not just there. So I think that is something I would like to say. And Ayush, you can stop commenting stupid things there.
No, yeah, Ayush, if I could have 3 guests on this live, Ayush would be the first one joining in after Avasti, because obviously this conversation is with Avasti. But bhai, I think I agree with you almost on everything. Like there's nothing that we could deny here. My realization with RML has been that for me personally, it has turned out to be good. Okay, I had time, which is something that RML gives you. RML gives you a lot of time, which is good thing in a way and not so much in the others, because when you see other institutes, especially the top tier law schools or the NLUs that we talk about, their entire culture, their academic structure, their participation structure is carved out in a way that it forces you to be engaged all the time. It forces you, for example, they don't just have midterms, they also have their weekly tests, they have their continuous processes, right? And I think this is something that RML does not necessarily mandate as an university. What it does is it gives you an opportunity. Like, sure, you have exams, you can study in the middle if you want to, or you may choose not to. It's completely different. Like we are passing exams and we know how we are passing exams. When at least I know how I'm passing exams. So the idea is that there are things about RML that can definitely improve. One thing that I absolutely love about RML is that when it comes to the ability to exploit your time, there are no restrictions. Like, for example, I know friends in universities who have strict restrictions. Like, they can't do this unless and until they're in MCC, they can't moot. Unless and until they're in this society, they can't do this. They have to have this much percentage of attendance, or they have to comply with this or that. RML gives you that freedom, right? You would agree that RML gives you that kind of freedom. So when it comes to this level of freedom, and you start working from the very first year, you won a moot in the first year, UPES moot, and
Right.
I don't even need to tell other people that you just won the national round of Leiden and are just waiting to win the world rounds as well. So I
No,
don't need to talk about it. Thoda aur zyada. Okay, but when it comes to events like mooting or negotiation mediation, what motivates you to participate into these things? And I know this because both of us, I have felt that motivation in you from the very first year. ऐसा
right,
नहीं हुआ कि second year में जाके suddenly you realize these are important things.
right.
You've been doing it from the first. What motivates you to do this?
See, firstly, the fun factor. I think negotiations, as far as ADR and negotiations goes, I think that's the most fun activity that I've experienced in law school, because it just helps you boost your thinking. Because when you're negotiating actual problems that can come about in business relationships, or even say personal relationships and family matters, it just helps you to think and helps you to formulate solutions that are not entirely legal. And I think that's the best part. It develops you as an individual, and as an individual lawyer, I should say, because you're not only exploring legal options, but you're also exploring, these mutually acceptable solutions, etc. So I think the first part is, the fun element. The second part, I think, is, for me, to be very honest, it might sound cliched to some, it might not sound cliched to some, but it's actually, the motivation to learn. See, as far as moots go, they're also based upon fun factor, but for them, the fundamental motivation has been to learn a new area of law. So I think the best way you can learn about a new area of law is to moot about it, right? Is to do a moot on it.
Okay.
Because I think, see, if you want to learn about international investment laws per se, or say public international law, there are so many options that you have, so many good moots that you have. And by participating in these moots, and I'm placing this on the fact, contingent on the fact basically that you're entirely dedicated towards participating, and not just participating it just for the sake of it, but to actually go and do something and win it. So when you go ahead and do that, you will necessarily read about that area of law, and you will read about it in depth from the very basics, from the very, and then you will focus to your, specific issues and, jurisdictional issues and all of that. But I think the whole process that provides you a fantastic opportunity to learn about the area of law that you've always wanted to, but you could not academically or per se restricting yourself to the syllabus that you have in law school. And, actually working upon real life disputes or disputes that will come about in the future. I think that has been the fundamental motivation for moot. So if I have to learn an area of law, I think my first choice would be to explore a moot on that particular topic. And the third has also been just to, I think this is something new that I would say, and I do not hear this often, but it's also, the third factor, it's also based upon to constantly keep myself in that competition spirit. And by that, I do not mean any type of negative competition, or, saying that I am better, or he is better, or they are better, or this law school is better. No, just to keep myself involved in the spirit of the competition. It actually inspires me and motivates me to go ahead and compete. And I think that's very important. Rather than winning or losing, just to stay in that competition and see how you do and see how other people do. It's very good for you. If you can, approach it with the right way, staying in that competitive structure is very important. Because, see, even if you go to let's compare it to the real life model or the real life profession, that's what's going to happen, right? You're going to get to witness other courtrooms, you're going to witness other lawyers. And when you get to hear these other lawyers, it might be possible that they get to face you in the future, or you have to argue against them. So it's very important to keep yourself, in that structure where you know how things are going about and how you're presenting yourself in that competitive structure. So I think these are the three motivations. And like this question, I would like to ask you as well. So what has been your motivation to do these things?
Oh, bhai, mine has been very simple. I haven't thought so much. My motivation. My motivation for moots is that I get to argue. That is my only motivation. That whatever be the area of law, obviously I get to learn about it, and but my reason to learn a law, particular area of law, is that I get to argue on it, that I get
Absolutely.
to play with the judges, I get to play the other team, that I get to intimidate the other team, that I get to use my abilities to maneuver with the arguments, maneuver with the questions, and I think I am satisfactorily okay in that area. I think I'm enough to perhaps enjoy that space, is what I understand. But apart from all of these things, I think the one thing that I not just agree with you, one thing that I like the most about you, and the reason why I think we are such good friends, is because we love that competitive spirit that you talk about.
Right.
That headspace of constantly being focused. Because when I don't have any moods and I don't have anything else to do, I get really fidgety. I get really it gets really problematic for me, right? And I think that goes same for you. You need something to keep working on, especially when it involves stakes, when there are stakes involved, like heavy stakes involved. So yeah, that's why I think that's why we moved, and you do a lot of other things as well. But before I move on to the lot of other things that you've done, especially during COVID-19, which by the way I'm a huge fan of, I just have to ask you one last question. I think this is a rather personal question. When in law school and when you're dealing with these various changes, when self-motivation comes into play, self-discipline comes into play, what are the major problems, those personal problems that you have seen with respect to personal growth, that you needed to work on in order to become more effective, perhaps?
Tough question. See, I think especially during the entire pandemic period, the first personal problem which I think everyone can relate to has been, focusing upon your development when things are so bad around you, right? And it just affects you a lot. See, even if you're not related to someone, but you get to hear about someone who's facing a huge problem because of the pandemic. And I think the prime example of that is the time that we're facing right now, right? Every day we hear news that is absolutely heartbreaking. And it's very difficult to focus upon things right now, especially. So I think during this entire pandemic period, that has been one major factor, to motivate yourself or to keep yourself focused when you're free and when you're not dealing with problems on your own personal front, just to work upon yourself. So that has been the first problem. The second problem has been this feeling of, constant irritation. And why this irritation comes about is because we are habitual to certain, safe spaces and structures in life. From the very start, we are placed in schools, then we go to universities. Universities have presented us with an opportunity to be absolutely independent in our lives, right? To do what we love, to do what we're passionate about, to work upon ourselves. So when I'm in university, if I'm getting bored, I just go out and play football, for example. Or if I'm bored, I just go ahead and listen to poetry that someone is reciting on Sampark Plaza, just for example. But I do not get to face that at my home. And why that irritation comes about and why these structures are important, because see, no matter how good virtually things are or how good the virtual platforms are, I'm not against them at all. I'm a huge fan of, the accessibility opportunities that these platforms are providing. But human interactions, personal interactions are absolutely important and irreplaceable. And they are important not just for you to not have that irritating feeling, but also for you to communicate yourself better and to understand people's problems and issues better. So I think that has been one other, personal problem that I've been facing, the lack of, this personal and offline interaction. And see, for people like me and you who have all, who have been constantly involved in public speaking, who are extroverts, to say, we express ourselves sometimes too much, but
भैया पूरा पॉडकास्ट लड़ा कब गया एक्सट्रोवर्टेशन के चक्कर में और क्या एक्सप्रेशन ऑफ एक्सपीरियंस.
That's what I'm talking about. See, for people like us, we have to find ways to express ourselves. I think that's where your podcast comes from. I think that's where my one-on-one series or anything or this conversation comes from. But that interaction, that personal interaction is really missing right now. So that has been another problem. And the third problem, and I think this is very important and people should keep this in mind, is the absolute lack of focus. And I think Ayush should be cursing me right now because I'm about to say this, and this is a perfect example of someone not practicing what they preach. And
Oh my!
it may come as a surprise to you as well. Is the absolute lack of focus that we have on our health and fitness. I think
Yeah.
with this pandemic and with the accessibility that it has provided and the time it has provided to people, everyone is doing something, and they're not only doing something, they're also constantly comparing themselves with others, right? He has done an internship, it's time for me to do one. He has done a mood, it's time for me to do one. That's happening because you have the time, right? And you think, I have the time, this is my opportunity, let's go ahead and do this. But because of this, people haven't been able to focus upon their health and fitness. And I have actually seen people suffering from problems because of that, including myself. I do not feel healthy because I do not work out or physically, exert myself to the extent I should at this age. See, this is no age to sit on a couch and just do things. I completely agree with that, but it's very tough when you get engrossed in a work and when you have that peer pressure, or when you have that feeling of constantly doing something because you do not want to, focus on, certain unfortunate events, then it becomes really tough to focus upon your health and fitness. And I think people should change this, and we have to focus upon this. See, in today's time, I think now everyone would at least agree that nothing is more important than health. So I think these are the three most, the biggest, I should say, personal problems that I have faced during the pandemic. And it's been very, very tough to overcome them.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with you. In fact, now that you talk about it, I realize I've gained around 8 to 9 kgs of weight now. In fact, I was always fat, but now I'm fatter. Like I'm good fat. Like now if kids around my society call me uncle, I just accept it. I'm like, okay, thank you. or ज़्यादा बेइज्जती की ज़रूरत नहीं है. But nonetheless, I think this is very important here, especially during COVID. I remember there was a particular period of time when I used to say this to a lot of people. I think I've said this far too many times, but I used to feel like my LinkedIn is on steroids. Like everyone is doing like what. I think we've had that conversation.
Yeah.
That sure, like it's important for us to do stuff, but it is also important for us to focus on our mental health. Like when you look at like constant peer pressure, and then you realize that all of these things do not translate into just one instance of activity. You have to do them one by one. You can't have 5 different courses, 2 different papers, 5 other projects, all of them, all of them at the one point of time, and then log jam yourself in something that you can't get out of. But one thing that has really good that has come out of this pandemic, I mean, this is very problematic to say that good has come out of this pandemic. But personally, I think for us, people who are privileged, who can actually stay back at home and lock themselves in and can actually work with internet access and everything. The couple of good things that have happened for us is that we found different modes of expressing and creating, made the academic stuff or made the anything else. So from your perspective, I think recently you've celebrated 1 year anniversary of this wonderful website that you literally manage along with other members of your website. I know Anushka is there, I know Abhinav is there, I know Abhyuday is there, I know Tejas is there, I know Ravi is there, there are other members as well. And I think it was your brainchild in a way or the other, the Contemporary Law Forum. And I think anyone who's in our circle, either follows you on LinkedIn or is connected to any one of us, has at least visited your website once. Like you've just put out your stats. You've had some 15, 20,000 visits or more, like, I don't know, like you've had proper stats out of that. So this is very important, because now I'll take a couple of minutes to tell you a couple of things that I have just observed. That I obviously have visited your website quite very often, because I am inculcating an habit of reading articles that you asked me to do, by the way. You specifically asked me to read articles. It's very important. So I do that. Now, what I observe is that with time, your website has grown with quality. Like
Right.
we have a lot of other sites, we have a lot of other blogs and portals as well where people they write themselves or whatever happens.
Right.
But the quality is very compromised everywhere else. Yours is a very professional front, bro. Like there is not one aspect on your website. I'm actually looking at it right now. There is
Right.
not one aspect on your website that I would say has been created by someone who's an amateur or someone who is just doing it for the fun of it. No, this is someone who actually thought it out, sat down, planned everything, moved ahead very strategically, has different strategic plans for every action that has been undertaken. So
Right.
now, my first question after this Mahabharat of an introduction
Right.
is, why did you start a website, and what was the major challenge that you faced? Like, for
Right.
example, technical know-how or legal know-how or whatever was that? Like, why
Right.
did you start a website? What was the major challenge?
First of all, again, thank you for that absolutely wonderful introduction to TCLF. And I think, as you've already mentioned, I would like to thank the whole team of TCLF for the work they put in. It's an absolutely brilliant team. Particularly, you're talking about the website. Let me tell you this: Abhinav is a fantastic website creator. He has been brilliant at managing things on that particular website. He tries to find solutions to technical problems, and Abhyuday has been brilliant with all these designs and all. And my co-founder Anushka, her eye for detail and her eye for getting things right, and that eye for perfection, that's been brilliant as well. And all the editors,
Yeah,
Tejas.
we're very familiar with how Anushka is good at it. I think none of my memos have ever been submitted without being reviewed by Anushka for the citation.
Yeah.
Let's
So
just
she
put it
would
out.
also, she would observe these minor error of, a slight font change, a slight comma being, here and there. And, that's very important as well. And the fantastic editorial team as well. Ravi, Ravi, Harshit, Tejas, all of these are excellent people. And I've been really fortunate to work with them. Now, why I started.
How many people are working in your team right now? How many other members are there? If you can introduce all of them very quickly.
See, on the editorial team, we have Ravi, we have Harshit, and there is myself. We also edit articles, Anushka, and then I have a friend from NLUD, Tanzi, she's there. Then we have Yagya from Nirma, we have Shailendra and Anchit from GNLU, we have Suneha from Nalsar, and all of these people are there in the editorial team. Tejas, of course, from NLIU, and then in the design team and outreach team, we have Abhinav, we have Abhyuday, we have Yash, and we have Abhishek. And so it's a medium-sized team, but we have particular role divisions and we know who has to do what. So I think that's very important. Now, why I started this? Let me ask you a question. How many student-run blogs can you find, legal blogs, that can actually present you with quality content and have a reputation of having an industry support or support from the professionals?
Easy, none.
So that was the particular motivation that I had when I started TCLF. All of these blogs, all of the major legal blogs in India were institutional. There was an absolute dearth of student-run, student-managed, but professionally backed blogs who would actually discuss contemporary issues, which not only have an outreach within the student community, but it's very important to have your voice or have your thoughts being, read or heard in the industry itself. When professionals read it, that's when it's going to create opportunities for you, right? Maybe they like what you write. Maybe they discuss it with you over LinkedIn or any other platform. And that is how you can secure, for example, an internship opportunity or an opportunity to write a follow-up article with that person. So that was the idea. And I witnessed that, in other jurisdictions such as US, UK, and particularly a lot of countries in Europe, Netherlands in particular, they have these fantastic student-run or community-run blogs. They're focused towards particular areas, most of them, but some of them are also generic in nature, and they're absolutely wonderful. They have continuously, great professors write for them, professionals write for them, and they have a good audience within the industry itself. And I wouldn't hesitate to in contributing towards that platform. If I write an article, I would be very willing to write for that platform. But in India, it feels like, a risk to contribute towards a student-run platform, because it's like, I've written this article, I think it's good, but what if I get it published on this platform and this platform does not have a reputation, or it doesn't actually matter if I get it published here or not because it doesn't have value. So it was the intention to create value. So, and that is where the answer comes to your second question. How to create this value? How to reach out to professionals? Or how do you create a platform which will actually have an audience within the industry and which will actually be beneficial to all these, writers? And it's not just an other platform, because there are a lot of legal blogs in India. There are a lot of political and social context blogs in India. So how do you differentiate yourself, right? It's very important to differentiate yourself. Otherwise, people are not going to contribute for you. So that was the major challenge. How do we set ourselves apart? So that is when our team came up with the idea of having, first of all, an advisory board. And that is why, we used our past internship experiences, our past moot court experiences, and all these competition experiences to reach out to people who have been, who are acquainted with us, or who have, who have seen us working particularly, and actually reach out to them, and, basically establishing this advisory board who would support your blog, who would facilitate the functioning of that blog, sometimes also review these articles for peer review, and just provide the constant guidance on how things can improve. And when you have that kind of support from the professionals, and they share your updates, they facilitate the functioning, they provide you with support and guidance, that's when the industry recognizes, right? If a partner, say at a tier 2 or a tier 1 firm, or even a mid-sized firm, or an advocate on record at the Supreme Court, shares your updates and tells, and for a fact that he is constantly guiding a particular blog, that's when the confidence develops that, okay, this blog is good and has people from the industry supporting it, and I can be confident about, writing for this particular forum. So I think that was the idea, and this is how we tackle the difficulty. And secondly, the challenge was to, this is very important for particularly, blogs and journals, how to have a good editorial process. Because it's very important to only put up quality content. You cannot put articles which do not have any novel perspectives, which, do not contribute anything but are mere repetitions of what has already been written in the past. So it's very important to get that quality content. So the challenge was how to get that quality content. We managed that by, having this industrial support, by having a great outreach team, and, developing other initiatives such as the one-on-one and, our newsletters and resources as well. But how to have a good selection process or editorial process to filter out that content, that was also very important. So that's when the editorial team sat together, and we devised a very good editorial policy, which, is a two-stage policy. And that is how we developed a mechanism which would only get the best piece of, writings to be featured on the blog. So that was another challenge. And of course, the third challenge was, because people had a lot of time, they were writing a lot of articles during this time, was to manage the volume of these articles. How do you effectively manage these articles so that no editor is burdened and no team member is burdened? And along with that, we do not also compromise on our review process, and we give a proper feedback to the authors, because that's very important. What happens is, many blogs do not provide a review or a feedback per se. They just write.
Blogs don't even respond to the submissions, man. Like, this is the most annoying thing. I think one of the major problems that most law students would have is these portals just don't respond. Yes, no, whatever, they don't. You give out a feedback. You literally just give out a feedback.
Right. And that's very demotivating, or disheartening, because if I put in some efforts on a particular thing, and if I submit it to you, I think it's your obligation or a responsibility, even if I'm not getting selected, or even if my piece is not accepted for publication, to at least render me a justification and provide me recommendations as to how can I make it better, and what different, or how I should do things differently so that it gets featured on the blog, or how it can become better. So this was also the idea. So we had to manage the voluminous amount of submissions, but also be very cognizant of the fact that we have to provide a feedback to the authors. So that was a challenge as well.
Fair. I think I won't ask you stereotypical questions here. I am generally not interested in knowing what do you see a future for TCLF. I think that's a very mundane, already run down question. Whatever happens with your project, whatever happens will happen. What I'm most interested in rather is knowing how do you innovate. So for example, tomorrow, whatever innovations are to happen with your website, whatever new things are to be added, whatever processes have to be evolved, they will evolve. My question is, how do you innovate them? What is the mentality or that structural difference that you go through in order to innovate with your processes? What are the different things that you take into consideration?
Right.
What are the things that you avoid? Right? So how do you go about the streamlining process?
This is again a brilliant question, and I think it comes from your experience of handling the One Take Show as well, is to constantly evolve your platform and innovate with things. And I think One Take Show will also complete 1 year very soon. I think when is it going to complete?
In May. Yeah.
So
in May.
See, you have that experience as well. So we have to constantly evolve and innovate. I think you would agree the first thing that we keep in mind, or the first step towards innovation, is to implement ideas. Sometimes what happens is you get an idea, it's an idea, but it's an idea you're not sure about, or you think that this is going to take some amount of prolonged efforts, and maybe this is not the right time to do that, and you just drop the idea and it never comes back to you, or when it does, it's too late by then. So it's not actually innovative by then. So the first step is to implement your ideas. So for example, if there is say 150 page judgment that comes about, for certain that majority of the law students and even professionals, and this is a very true fact, it's a truism, that even many professionals do not have the time to read that that 150 page judgment, or a 200 page judgment. So an idea comes to your mind that, okay, let me prepare a 10 page summary for this, and it's going to be a very elaborate form of putting out things, wherein we also discuss issue wise how the court has went about it. But you have that idea, and you think that no, this will take 3-4 days. By that time someone will obviously publish a summary of this judgment, and by that time I will be late, and so just let's drop that idea. What I would say is, drop that feeling of constantly being late, or having these external considerations in mind, and go ahead and just implement these ideas. So what it takes 3 or 4 days, but what will matter is the kind of content you put out. So your 10 page summary will obviously be better for a professional and for a law student than a 2 page summary or a 1500 page summary. Because with a 10 page summary, I can have a detailed idea about, an elaborate idea about a particular thing, but not with that 1500 or 2000 word thing. So the first step is to implement these ideas. The second step, I think, is also be very mindful and, recognize and tap the opportunities that come about your way. So for example, many blogs outside India have a concept of running these talk shows and podcasts, and that is where the idea of having this one-on-one series strictly confined to legal issues and contemporary legal developments with professionals came about. Because how did I tap this opportunity? Because what I realized was, with the coming of Spotify, with the coming of YouTube, first of all, that's the most important platform, the consumption of people in terms of audio and visuals has increased manifold. So people do not read as much as they listen to things or watch things, right? If I tell you that there's a 20-minute documentary, a 20-minute episode of this particular organization on YouTube on this particular topic, you are going to go ahead and watch that particular episode or documentary because, it has audio, it has visuals, and it just, keeps your concentration at place, and it, entertains you as well. But it doesn't become mundane. That is what I want to say. But if I ask you to read a 3,000 word article or 3,000 to 5,000 word article on that, it is possible that you might lose interest, or you do not go ahead and actually go ahead and read about it because you do not feel like, or you're lazy, or you think that it's going to take a lot of time. So that is how I tap this opportunity of also having this series, and having these interviews and conversations on legal developments, because I thought that people can consume important developments by way of audio and visuals as well. So it's very important to be recognized and be mindful of the kind of opportunities that that have come about, particularly by the way of this pandemic. See, if you were in law school, would you have ever come up with the one take show? Certainly not. If we were just going about normal RML life, no, right?
Yeah.
And I wouldn't have ever come up with TCLF, right?
Yeah.
Because we had this constant fear, and I think this is the third factor: reach out to people, and that is the very important step for innovation. Because when you reach out to people, they present you with novel thoughts and suggestions, and that can actually provide you with very important guidance. Now, if we were in RML, and why do I say this? We had this constant fear that professionals will not respond to us, right?
Yeah.
But with this pandemic, they also have time on their hands, right? Because they're working from home, and 1 or 2 hours free time everyone gets, right? So it also provides us with the opportunity to basically reach out to these professionals, to these people who we thought were very arrogant and would not reply to our messages. And I don't know how that idea came about, or how that fear came about.
There was always a distance gap. Like, this is what the principle of my podcast also is. I think I tell this very often to a lot of people, is that we as law students who do not come from perhaps the first couple of first top tier law schools have this gap, this difference between the leaders and the luminaries in the legal field and the law students who are reading it. This gap needed to be bridged. And I think what you're saying is absolutely right. Now we just stopped caring about it. We just started reaching out to them.
Right. Just drop an email, just drop a text on LinkedIn, and it is, I say 90% there is a possibility that they are going to respond. And even if they can't do it they can't have a conversation with you at that point of time, they will give you a date and time when they'll be free, right? So I think it's very important to reach out to people in order to innovate. So I think these three things are very important. Yeah.
Perfect, yeah, Shashwat. I think these I think I've always been inspired by the projects that you've undertaken, and not just with this blog. I mean, obviously, this is something that you've started now. I think I've told you this, and we've had this conversation, something that perhaps in another conversation on Instagram, we'll start talking about something more personal. But the idea of having that level of constant awareness in your peer, like, we can always be surrounded by people who are satisfied with where they are, or perhaps do not necessarily have that fighting spirit. And the reason why it is important is because we don't necessarily are in an institution or in a surrounding that automatically facilitates your growth. Your growth has to be manufactured, and that manufacturing requires a particular atmosphere. That atmosphere requires you to be surrounded by the kind of people you need. So I think this is the exact kind of atmosphere that I hope everyone gets, because the market is going to get more and more competitive, which we have to somehow dodge, so we can have a conducive place for everyone in this market, which I think is possible somewhere, and a subject matter for a different conversation. Nonetheless, my last question to you is that when we talk about this huge dilemma of finally entering the industry, which we will in about a year's time, and we see that we have spent about 4 years in this law school, and we reflect, like I often reflect, and I see that there are some very important basic things that we might have missed out on. For example, administrative law, something very recently we realized, is not just 7 lamps of truth. Any RFL student watching this, gone through that class, knows what I'm talking about. Administrative law is a proper area of service law that is used for litigation practice, by the way. Not aware of it. Like, then suddenly I realized, oh, I had to study the subject very seriously. Okay. So all these things, we look back and we realize that 4 years have passed, but now we are supposed to enter the industry. What is your current game plan?
See, the game plan is to firstly convince myself and tell myself constantly that I know nothing about the profession, and
Yeah.
My knowledge of law at this point of time is absolutely nothing, right?
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And that is very important for everyone who's going to enter the industry to tell themselves. What you learn in law school is not how the profession works. And I do not even agree with the idea that law school teaches you how to study the law. Frankly, it doesn't. I do not believe in that concept. It is you yourself who teaches, your own self somehow to have, an iota of knowledge about a particular field of law through your own initiatives and experiences.
Hashtag Mooter's life. Hashtag Mooter's life.
And it can be, mooting, it can be articles, it can be whatever activity you pursue, but it has to come about from your own self, right? And so this is very important for everyone to tell themselves that the industry is going to present a lot of challenges to you. And the first because it's going to be very difficult for you to adjust with that entire environment, because in law school doesn't prepare you for that environment. So I think it is very important in terms of the game plan to have 6 or 7 months, prepare yourself for the first 6 or 7 months and tell yourself that the industry is going to present me with challenges and the profession is going to be new to me and I'll have to adapt. And it is going to come about slowly. See, the legal profession and the medical profession, it's a never-ending process. See, these two professions that come to me at the back of my, head, that you have to constantly study and you have to constantly evolve to excel. There's a new field or there's a new legislation that gets passed about, and that's what happened with the IBC as well, right? And you see a lot of people getting an interest in IBC these days. And a lot of lawyers, establishing a good IBC practice because there's a new there's a new field of law that has come about and that has presented new opportunities and challenges to you. And you just have to tap those opportunities and face those challenges in order to excel. So it's very important to convince yourself that you know nothing about the profession and you will know about the profession with time. It is going to take time. And secondly, to realize that with the passing times, you will have to evolve as a lawyer. You will have to constantly study new fields of law. You will have to constantly, get the guidance of seniors. Do not hesitate to get the guidance of seniors in this particular profession. That is also a very important part of the game plan. See, I think it's very important to not be arrogant or to be egoistic with the fact that I would not reach out to a particular person even when you know that they can help you, just because of some ego clashes or some problems. So it's because, see, in this profession everything runs by the word of mouth. If I say good things about you, say for example I say that Kaustubh is a brilliant investment law lawyer, right? Or he's a brilliant IBC law advocate. So the people I tell this to, they're going to refer to you for their cases. Similarly, this word of mouth will run for me as well, right? And that is how I'm going to get new clients and new cases. So everything is going to run through the word of mouth. So it's very important to realize all these things. And lastly, what is important for the game plan, I think, is to, in this coming 1 year, and particularly people who are going to graduate in 2022. I cannot say things about the people who are going to graduate in 2021 because they already have a game plan and they're almost finalized. And even those who do not have a game plan are in the process of finalizing these game plans. But people are going to graduate next year. It's very important to have a conversation with yourself. This is the right time. Even if you have not had that conversation with yourself up to this point, it's very important to have that right now and just ask yourself, what interests me the most and what is the field and what is the kind of area that I would want to get into for the first few years of the profession. See, do not plan things of what you're going to do at 40, 45, right? 45, I want to do this. By 50, I want to do this. Plan things in a manner that this is what interests me at this point of time. And for the next 2 years, I want to have an experience in this field. I have an interest in IBC and commercial laws, contract laws in particular, and I want to join a commercial litigation set. This is my idea for the next 2 years. I have had this conversation with myself, and then I focus upon that area and just go ahead and do that. So it's very important to do that. And I know I said this, that this was the last thing, but I think it's very important to put it out there that at this particular point of time, with so many bad things and so many disheartening things happening around, it's okay to not focus upon these things right now. I think you would agree with this fact that it's absolutely okay if you're sitting idle, and if movies interest you, if watching series is what keeps you entertained and keeps your mind on a healthy position, go ahead and do that. Just it's very difficult at this point of time for anyone to focus upon these things, and it's absolutely okay. Even if you decide by the end of your 5th year that I want to do this, and in the next 6 months I'm going to have a crack at this, it's absolutely fine. But at this point of time, it's very important to keep your head at the right place, in view of the surroundings. So that's from my limited understanding of law school and my limited understanding of working with professionals, that's what I can say.
Well, your limited understanding begets a lot of maturity, man. I think I've told you this before also. I think completely agree that this is, like, for example, right now, my entire family is in fact suffering from COVID. Thankfully, so the things are not getting very bad. I mean, obviously there are complications, but not very bad, touch wood. But the fact that we can actually give ourselves some time to rest, perhaps introspect, give ourselves some time to watch movies, TV series. For example, a very, 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 very close friend of mine is making me watch all those Korean dramas, and it's okay. Like, it's fine. It's okay. You can just sit back and relax. But the game plan naturally is that it should not really kill your hunger. The fact that you have to make something of yourself, because we obviously come from a middle class family. We are going to be the first generation lawyers. Mostly, a lot of people are. And for that, I think we need a very specific set of skills that need to be acquired, which your law school is not going to give you. So, like, please, nothing in your law school is going to help you. I mean, I have been very, very fortunate to have been interning for almost a year now. And when I intern, I realized, bro, nothing of that has any correlation with whatever goes inside the university. But it's okay. It's okay. I mean, it's fine. As you say, that once we enter the university, we enter the university with a very fresh mindset, a novice mindset, and that is how we are supposed to tackle things, and that is how we are supposed to move forward. I think we have this one question by Mr. Pratyush, who asks you to explain feminism. I think, Pratyush bhai, what we'll do is we'll have that conversation on some other occasion.
Actually, Pratyush is a friend of mine, and this is actually related to an incident that happened when we went on a trip together. So just ignore that question.
No, I got that, because there's a follow-up comment by Nifty_Nikhil that says, "Arey Pratyush bhai, someone got that context." I get that, man. But if we are to have a conversation on feminism, I'm sure Shashwat will go full Jordan Peterson on its ass. But nonetheless, a very, very fun conversation, bhai. I think we've not had this long of a conversation for a very long time, and it was very important for me personally to reconnect with a very dear friend and to perhaps have this conversation, and also to use Instagram Live to spread out the positivity and the inspiration that we can all draw from each other's experience, may it be peers or the seniors or anyone. And I think I speak for a lot of you when I say, you are doing good. You're, like, I won't say great and excellent, amazing. Your action speaks for themselves. I'm no one to validate it or discredit it. But who I am is someone who can always say that, bro, you're moving the right path, and I am someone who's walking right by your side, and someone who's trying to learn from your experience as well. So thank you so much for this amazing conversation, Shashwat, and thank you so much for coming live with me on this podcast.
Absolutely, likewise, bhai, and thank you again for your very kind words. And I think it's because of dear friends like you and other people who I'm very lucky to have in my life that keep me constantly motivated and inspire me to do things. And just a couple of things for the One Take show. What I like the most about your show is the kind of topics you explore and the kind of people you get. So you do not have this image in mind that I will only get professionals. You're also ready to connect with students. You're also ready to connect with artists. And I think that's very important for a law student and a lawyer to do, because these are the kind of people who you'll interact with in the future as well, right? Because it's very important to have an idea of things. So it's very important to do that. And I think the One Take show is doing a great job on that front. The kind of diversity it has in terms of the topics and in terms of the professionals and the students. It's actually very, very happy. It makes me very happy to see, students coming forward and sharing their thoughts as well. Artists coming forward and sharing their thoughts as well. So just keep it up and keep your, head in the right place again, and just keep focusing upon what you do. And thank you for providing me with this opportunity to come on this brilliant live session with you. Thank you.
Perfect. Yeah, काफी ज़्यादा चीज़ out हो गया. We are not used to say thank you to each other, especially in English language, with a proper cordial conversation for so long.
Right.
So I'm going to end this live right here. And thank you so much, Shashwat. Thank you so much for everyone for joining. And this episode will be available on YouTube as well. Hopefully, if it gets downloaded. Right. Okay. Chalo, okay. Thank you, Shashwat. Thank you so much for joining. Right. All right. Bye-bye.